Welcome to Rich Planet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Today's guest investigated one of the UK's most intriguing UFO cases, which took place near Sheffield in 1997, and in doing so he came up against a lot more than he bargained for. I'd like to welcome Max Burns. Welcome, Max.
Hi, Richard.
Now then, just tell us first, Max, how did you first get interested in the subject of UFOs?
When I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to watch television. It was the library and reading books, and by the time I was 12 or 13, I'd read just about everything I could get my hands on the Bermuda Triangle, Charles Berlitz and stuff like that. And I was always interested in space and stuff like that. And for me, as a child, the question for me was really not, when I used to look out the stars out the bedroom window, not is there life in the universe apart from us. My question, even as a child, was always, I wonder where the life is in the universe, because it would be an awful waste of space if we're the only intelligent life in this universe.
Sure. Now, were you already writing for UFO magazines before this Sheffield incident took place?
No, I wasn't, but I was going to a few conferences, and I've just been sort of in the background, just doing a little bit of private research and studying the subject.
All right, so in 1997, towards the end of March, this is when this flying triangle incident took place. Let's just explain, because there's a lot of evidence that we're not going to have time to go into today. So explain what you think the sequence of events was on that night.
Military jets were scrambled from RAF Coningsby. It's standard operating procedure. Coningsby at the time was a frontline tactical base. When something is picked up on radar and they haven't got any, I think it's called a transponder code for the aircraft, a bogey as you'd call it, the standard British military response is to launch and investigate what it is they've picked up on radar. So the jets were scrambled to an object over the Peak District. It was seen from as early as 7:45 p.m. By one witness, and it was just about still light at that point in March.
Right.
And then I later found out the following day that it had been tracked on radar from RAF Linton-on-Ouse, because at the club I was working at, one of the bar staff, his best friend since they were 4, was a radar operator at RAF Linton-on-Ouse, and in fact this lad's parents were still both in the RAF serving at the time.
Okay, and a number of different types of military hardware you think was scrambled in connection with this incident?
Well, on further investigation, there was tornadoes, GR1s, which apparently were launched from Norfolk, RAF Marnham. There was AWACS in the sky, all sorts of helicopters, light aircraft. In fact, on further investigation, this was a strange reply from, I spoke to a sergeant at the RAF base in Norwich. He said to me in an email that many aircraft were involved that night, including NATO apparently, but we can't tell you exactly how many aircraft and which aircraft were in the skies that night over the Sheffield area, which I found quite strange, because it's British standard policy to know the identification of every single aircraft that's flying around.
Now, you had a number of eyewitnesses that saw the object that presumably the military craft were vectored to chase. So just give us a summary, because you've got lots of witness accounts. Just give us a summary as what you've built up as to what this object looked like.
Well, I was at home on the night in question. It was a Monday night. Hail Bop was in the sky. It was a cold night, and my manager from the club, his wife telephoned me at 10 o'clock to say she'd just seen a flying triangle right over her house in Dromfield. Now, this lady, Emma Maidenhead, she'd only just recently recovered from cancer and had a 9-month-old child. So I don't think she was in any mood for making stories up. So she came and picked me up, and we went driving around the Peak District that night while it was going on. Right,
and a number of other witnesses have corroborated this similar sighting?
Many witnesses all reported seeing the same thing. In fact, on a number of forums on the internet now, there's other people now coming forward saying they saw the object that night.
And it was described categorically as not being some kind of military type aircraft because it was, well, it had a low humming sound, not in line with sort of a jet, and it was extremely large and was going far too slow. Just tell me about the speed.
Oh, Emma said to me that she lives in Dromfield, quite high up. You can see the Peak District from her house. Emma said that she was Manchester United was playing on the TV. She's not her husband is a football fan. She was looking out the upstairs bedroom window with the baby, and she says that this flying triangle just came over the house. It was literally only a couple of 100 feet above the house. She says I mean, I've been to the house. She says it was like 300 feet across, completely blocked out the sky, and it lit up all the houses and the street in like a cerise orange glow. She said it was humming like an electrical substation and travelling at about 30 miles an hour.
All right, so we've got a triangular craft which seems to be different from standard military hardware. We've got a whole load of military hardware being scrambled, presumably to try and intercept it. Now we come on to probably the most controversial aspect of this case, which is the fact that you believe a military jet crashed on that evening. So just tell us what evidence points to that, Max.
Sure. I got a copy of the police incident log, which was quite extensive. Many reports from the public in there. One report in particular was a man called Jonathan Degenhart, who at the time had been walking in the Welsh mountains with a minibus full of people, and they were travelling back. It was approximately 11 o'clock at night, and they were just crossing the small viaduct at Lady Bar Reservoir in the Peak District, and they were flagged down by a man who said, I need to get to Sheffield. Jonathan Degenhart, at the time in the police log, said that the man was smelling of diesel. So a year went by, and then I wrote to Jonathan Degenhart, and he telephoned me, and he said on audio, and I have the audio of that interview, he said that that since then he'd joined the Royal Air Force as a jet engine specialist working on jet engines, and he now knows that the man that night was not stinking of diesel, and in fact the man was smelling of aviation fuel that night, and he categorically restated that 6 times during the audio interview. And then a few days later, after Dr. David Clark apparently spoke to him, he was forced to retract that statement, and then made a statement saying that I'd made up what he'd said, but the audio clearly shows that I had not. I was actually told by an ambulance driver from Boston in Lincolnshire, who's head of the Horticultural Society, and has been an ambulance driver for 21 years, married with 3 children, an upstanding citizen.
And you've got this recorded on audio as well?
I have, yeah. He told me that a friend of his, who used to be a former police officer at that time, is now an ambulance driver, and they were talking about various things, and he said that he was in the police control room at Netland. This is the police officer. He said that he was in the police control room at Netland Police headquarters that night, and he says it came on as a thing called the UK link. It's like for passing flash messages among police forces, and he told the ambulance driver that it came on the system in the station while he was there, that there'd been an incident in the Peak District, because obviously it's right next to Coningsby Base where the tornadoes were launched from, and that 2 men had been picked up by the police in the Peak District on Snake Pass.
Right, so you...
Pilot and co-pilot.
You even suspect you know what type of jet it was that possibly crashed. Just tell us that, Matt.
Yeah, I believe it was a Tornado.
Do they normally have 2 occupants in them?
They do, as a pilot and a navigator.
Right. Okay, so what other evidence makes you believe that a military jet crashed on that evening? There's
the explosions, the two sonic events. Well, they're called sonic events. There's the reports of the explosion. I heard it at my home, 10 miles away, and it shook the house. It was that loud.
Right.
I mean, everybody heard it for miles around. As well as smoke plumes rising from the Peak District moorland. Many witnesses intimated that And then recently, about 2 years ago, a couple of metal detectorists have discovered jet engine parts in a wood in the area where the incident happened. And I've checked with all the archaeological aviation websites, and there's only 2 jets ever crashed in the Peak District, and there's maybe 150 planes crashed there since 1913. These people know the location of every single plane that's ever crashed in the Peak District, and this wreckage of a jet engine, it's titanium. The titanium wasn't used in jet engines until the SR-71 Blackbird in 1969, and I've got engine parts, numbers, photographs of the engine parts, and no plane has ever been recorded as crashed at this location. There's a crater and tree damage for 300 metres.
All right, so as you say, all of the RAF crashes are recorded and available for public scrutiny.
Not well,
over the years.
Well, supposedly.
So you think this has been omitted from that list? So if it did crash, what makes you think why it was omitted from the list? Why have they not admitted that this happened?
I got told by one of these aviation buffs that if they want to, if something crashes and they don't want to have it recorded, what they'll do is they'll put the aircraft down as being taken in for maintenance, and then say it got damaged beyond repair while it was having maintenance done to it, and they can take it off the register that way. But the fact of the matter is that right now at this moment we've got titanium jet engine parts in a wood in Sheffield with a crater and tree damage still visible, and no aircraft has ever been recorded as crashed at that location.
All right, and Max, just hold it there. We're going to go for a break, and more on the Sheffield UFO incident after this.